Administration of the Mauryan Empire. By the 3rd century BCE, the Mauryan state, with its center in Magad, was firmly established. It had a vast territory to control and had an administrative apparatus for doing it. The establishment of the Mauryan state ushered in a new form of government, that of a centralized empire. Within its framework, it united a number of people and tribes. The Mauryan centralized monarchy became a paternal despotism under Ashoka. In this video, we are going to talk about the different aspects of the administrative machinery of the Mauryan Empire. From a variety of sources like the text of Arthasatra, Greek accounts, and the Asokan inscriptions, we get a fairly good idea of the Mauryan administrative system. So we are going to talk about the central administration, the provincial, district, and village administration, and we will see how they impacted on the overall running of the Mauryan Empire. Let us begin with central administration. The central administration during the Mauryan period could be classified under the following heads. These were the elements of the central administration, or different aspects of it. It comprised the king, the council of ministers, then we talk about city administration, army, espionage network, law and justice, public welfare, and finally we look into the revenue administration. So one by one we will try to assess and analyze the role of each of these components or each of these elements in the overall administrative apparatus of the Mauryan Empire. So the king first. The king was the supreme authority of the state, and all basic policy matters as well as crucial decisions were taken by the king. The Arthashastra gives final authority to the king in all aspects of administration, and it gives the king primacy among the 7 components of the state mentioned in various texts, also as Saptangas. So, when Kautilya mentions about the Saptangas or the 7 limbs of the state, what is included is the king, minister, territory, fort, treasury, army, and friends, of which the king is the most important. According to the Arthashastra, the king occupies the central position in administration because of the following functions. First of all, the king appoints or removes the ministers or amatyas. Secondly, defends the treasury and the people. Thirdly, works for the progress and welfare of the people. Fourthly, punishes the evil. And fifthly, influences the people or praja through his morality. At the same time, Arthashastra mentions certain necessary virtues for the king. For example, he should have been born in a high family or Uchchikul. He should have the capability to control various small kings and officials. He should have a sharp intellect, truthfulness, and he must also be an upholder of dharma. By the time of Ashoka, the Mauryan Empire had consolidated its position. An important development in the king's position now was the emergence of a paternal attitude towards his subjects, as in the Dholi inscription Ashoka states, "All men are my children." Ashoka kept the welfare of the people as the prime aim of administration, but in terms of political analysis, he was an absolute monarch. By adoption of the title Devanampiya, that is beloved of the gods, Ashoka, according to Romila Thapar, made an attempt to emphasize the connection between kingship and divine power. And this in fact indicates that the king was now exercising his authority in religious matters also. We come to the second component of central administration, which is the Council of Ministers. The Arthashastra as well as the Ashokan inscriptions refer to a council of ministers called Mantri Parishad. The Arthashastra mentions that the work of the state cannot be carried out without assistance. Now, if you look into the Ashokan inscriptions, the Girnar rock edicts of Ashoka mention about the functions of the Council of Ministers or Mantri Parishad. For example, in Rock Edict 3, it implies that the Parishad was expected to see that new administrative measures were carried out by different categories of officials. Similarly, we have another evidence in Rock Edict 6, which mentions that the ministers can discuss the king's policy during his absence, suggest amendments, and decide upon any important matter which the king has left to them. Yet the council had to report its opinion to the king immediately. Now, the power of the council might have varied from time to time, yet its primary role remained that of an advisory body, and this was because the final authority vested with the king. And Kautilya, in his Arthashastra, has also listed the issues on which the king should consult his ministers. Now, we get references about 18 departments or tirthas of the central government in the Arthashastra, and some of the important officials involved here were, for example, the Karmantika, who looked after industries, Antarvamsika looked after the king's security, Sannidhata looked after treasury, and there were many more other officials and departments. Next, we come to city administration. Megasthenes has given a vivid description of administration in Patliputra, and this helps us in understanding the city administration during this period. In this account, the city council was divided into 6 sub-councils or committees, and each committee had 5 members. We will look into the functions of these committees. The first committee looked after industry and crafts. Its functions included inspection of such centers, fixing the wages, etc. The second committee looked after the foreigners, arranging for their food, stay, comfort, security, etc. The third committee's work was registration of births and deaths. The functions of the fourth committee included looking after trade and commerce, inspection of weights and measures, controlling the market, etc. The fifth committee inspected the manufactured goods and made provisions for their sale. Then we have the sixth committee, which collected taxes on the goods sold, the rate being 1/10 of it. Arthashastra, however, does not mention such committees. We find this in Megasthenes' description, but we do find in the Arthashastra a well-defined plan of city administration, and the Arthashastra mentions officials like Panyadhyaksh, who looked after trade and commerce, Sulkadhyaksh, who looked after collection of taxes, Gopa looked after registration of births and deaths, and Nagarika was the head of urban administration. Then we have Bandhan Garadhyaksh, who looked after the jail. Rakshi was the police, looked after the security of the people. Then Lohadhyaksh, Savarnika, etc. were superintendents who looked after work in the centers where goods were manufactured. So we can say that the city administration during this period was elaborate and well planned. The next important component of central administration was the army. The size and organization of Chandragupta Maurya's army was fairly large, and Pliny mentions that there were so many elephants, cavalry, infantry, etc. in his army. Then we also have Plutarch's account, which refers to these details. According to Megasthenes, the branches of the army consisted of 6 parts: the infantry, the cavalry, elephants, chariots, transport, and admiral of the fleet. Kautilya has referred to Chaturanga Bala, that is, 4 components of the army: infantry, cavalry, chariots, and elephants, each under a commander. Besides these, he also mentions about medical services to the army, and we also know that the officers and soldiers were paid in cash. The state, in fact, spent a large amount of revenue in maintaining its army. Officers of the army included Ayudh Garadhyaksh, who looked after production and maintenance of a variety of armaments. Rathadhyaksh looked after the construction of chariots, and Hastyadhyaksh looked after the elephant force. Espionage system. The Mauryan administration had a well-knit system of espionage. A watch was kept practically on all important officials as well as on general public. The main tasks of the spies recruited involved keeping an eye over the ministers, reporting on government officials, collecting impressions regarding the feelings of citizens, and know the secrets of foreign rulers, etc. Another important component of central administration was law and justice, and in order to maintain social order, smooth functioning of the administrative system, and flow of revenues to the state, an orderly legal system was established under the Mauryas. So, there are two kinds of courts mentioned in the Arthasatra, Dharmastya and Kantaksodhan. Dharmastya was the court which decided personal disputes, and Kantaksodhan courts which decided upon matters related to individuals and the state. For example, wages to workers, conduct of workers, murder, etc. The sources of law, as mentioned by Kautilya, were Dharma, Vyavahar, Charitra, and Rajsasan. The king was the upholder of Dharma and held the supreme judicial power. And it is also worth mentioning that the penalties in Arthashastra were based on Varna hierarchies, meaning that for the same kind of offense, a Brahman was punished much less severely than a Shudra. Then we talk about public welfare. The Mauryan state took a keen interest in public works. The account of Megasthenes and the Arthashastra refer to these works. First of all, the state took considerable interest in irrigation because it could be a major source of revenue, and Megasthenes has mentioned officials who supervised irrigation. In Arthashastra also there are references to various modes of irrigation. Then there are many references to medicine men of various kinds during this period, like physicians, etc. And from Asokan inscriptions, we know that medical treatment and medicines were available to both men and animals. The state also helped its citizens during natural calamities like floods, famines, etc. The Arthashastra mentions that the king also looked after orphans, old women, etc. An important aspect of public works was the laying down and repair of roads and opening inns. Thus, the state spent a certain amount from its revenues on public works. This must have increased during the time of Ashoka due to his concern for public welfare and paternal attitude towards his subjects. Finally, we come to revenue administration. State revenues during the Mauryan period were derived from various channels. Kautilya has listed different resources from which revenue flowed into the state treasury, which was looked after by an official Sannidhata. So the inflow of revenue came from road and traffic, which is called Vanikpat, pastures, Vraja, plantations, Setu, forests, Van, mines, Khan, rural areas, Rashtra, and cities or Durg. When we talk about outflow of revenue, most of the revenue collections which went to the state treasury had their outflow in the form of expenditure on king's expenses, gifts, salaries of officials, public works, religious donations, construction, maintenance of army and war. Ashoka had reduced the bhag, which was the state's share in agricultural produce of the village Lumbini, to 1/8, since it was the birthplace of Buddha. This was about central administration. Now we come to the provincial administration. From Ashokan edicts, we get the names of four provincial capitals: Tosali in the east, Ujjain in the west, Suvarnagiri in the south, and Takshila in the north. The head of the provincial administration was the Kumar or royal prince, who used to govern the province as the king's representative. For example, Ashoka had been the Kumar of Ujjaini and Takshila before becoming the king. Kumar was assisted by the Mahamatyas and a council of ministers. The council of ministers at the provincial level not only acted as a check on the Kumar but at times had direct relations with the king. Among the senior officials were the Mahamatas. Their appointment could be made both by the king as well as the Kumar. Another category of high officials was that of Amatyas. This category too must have held special powers, for it was against their arbitrary actions that the people of Takshila revolted during the reigns of Bindusar and Ashoka. Next we come to district administration. The officials listed at the level of district during this period were mainly Pradeshta, Rajuka and Yukta. Pradeshta was the overall in charge of the district. Rajuka, he carried out public welfare functions, and it is mentioned particularly in the fourth pillar edict of Ashoka. Yukta was a junior officer giving secretarial kind of assistance to the other two. Now, the functions of these officials, they included the survey and assessment of land, tours and inspections, revenue collection, maintaining law and order, etc. Village administration. The Ashokan edicts do not throw much light on village level administration, but there are references to this unit of administration in Arthasatra. It appears that the officials at this level were local people appointed and assisted by the villagers. The term mentioned for such officials is Gramika. We find Gop and Sthanika acting as intermediaries between the district and village level administration, and their functions included demarcating village boundaries, maintaining records of lands used for various purposes, recording income and expenditure of people, and recording taxes, revenue and fines, etc. The villages did have a certain amount of autonomy in administering their affairs. It is clear that the Mauryan state employed a large number of officials at all levels of administration. An important aspect worth noting for this period is the payment of salaries in cash. We have reference to a commander-in-chief receiving 48,000 panas, a soldier receiving 500 panas, and a laborer 60 panas. This indicates the predominance of money economy and at the same time tremendous burden on the state treasury. This is all about the Mauryan administration, uh, in which we have seen in detail how different components of the state helped in carrying out administration smoothly in the Mauryan Empire. Thank you for watching the video, and please look out for my next upcoming video on Mauryan economy. Thank you for watching.